As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and today we really need to talk about what happened to Prigozhin and this plane crash that occurred in Russia with the Wagner Group that apparently a lot of the high-ranking officials as well as Prigozhin were on board. And the mainstream media really doesn't want to talk about this. Well, why? How is this going to impact the Russia-Ukraine conflict? I think we need to talk about it. And so joining me on the show is Zachary Yost, who is with the Mises Institute and hosts a really great podcast there. He joined the show a couple of months ago when we were talking about the Ukraine conflict. So I'm bringing him back to give his insights and analysis of who could have been responsible if this was a targeted attack rather than just a tragic accident. So we're going to talk about all that and more, and also why is the U.S. continuing to fund the Ukraine conflict? So Speaker McCarthy really needs to answer that one, but we'll be right back with more here on the Jenna Ellis Show. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. All right, so joining me now is Zachary Yost, who is the co-host of a podcast for the Mises Institute. And give me the title of that podcast one more time, Zach.
War, Economy, and State.
Awesome. So you were on previously, and everyone who listened to this just really loved it. I got a ton of feedback for your commentary on what's going on with the Ukraine and Russia conflict. And so I wanted to bring you back on now to talk about something that, we're all kind of familiar with in the news of this plane crash with Prigozhin on board. I think it was last week, but because of all of the other headlines, it's been surprising to me to see that mainstream media really has kind of ignored this. So is that, do you think, purposeful, or is that something that people just aren't really paying attention because there's so much else going on in the news?
Right. Well, thanks again for having me back on. I think part of it might be due to the fact that no one exactly knows what's going on. I mean, there's just sort of a ton of speculation at this point. So yes, it was the August 23rd. Prigozhin, and not just Prigozhin, who is sort of the figurehead of the Wagner Mercenary Group, but basically the whole sort of top brass were on a private jet flying from St. Petersburg to Moscow, and it crashed halfway there, basically. And so, of course, everyone immediately thought this was payback for the sort of abortive march on Moscow that still is rather confusing as to what exactly the aims were. And it was actually 2 months to the day So that seems a bit on the nose there. But it's not clear who did it. Yeah, I mean, it's not, doesn't seem likely, but it is possible there was just an accident. Speculation has ranged from Russian air defenses just blasted it out of the sky, which I do not think is likely. I mean, I've seen pictures of the wreckage and it doesn't look like it was, ripped apart by an anti-aircraft missile. It seems more likely there was probably a bomb or something on board. And there is an investigation into it, but I mean, it's I would not exactly find the Russian report on what happened to be truthful. Now, there is speculation as to who is responsible, assuming it was not just a freak accident. And of course, everyone would automatically assume Putin. But from my understanding and from some Russian observers and Russian commentators themselves that I pay attention to, this would not fit with Putin's style generally. He's generally considered very slow moving on these sorts of things. Rather than, I mean, I've heard people say, oh, of course Prigozhin would be killed, but I thought it would be in 5 years from now. So 2 months is rather rapid. So there's some speculation that it was carried out by the military, because, I mean, Prigozhin, I mean, for months was just spewing vitriol about the military, saying that the head of the military, Shoigu and Gerasimov, should have been hanged and things like that. So it is possible the military carried it out. It's possible Putin ordered it, but I generally agree that seems unlikely, but possible. It could have just been an accident. So speculation everywhere, implications for what Wagner is going to be doing in the future. I don't doubt that they'll still be around in some form. They've become a useful tool for Russian foreign policy, especially in Africa, which when we're recording this, there was another coup by a U.S. trained military officer in Gabon. But they play a big role there. They're still in Belarus, and they'll probably have some sort of altered legal status. These sort of mercenary groups are not really legal in Russia, and it's just sort of an ad hoc, Prigozhin was Putin's chef, as they said, so he could do it. And now he's gone, still a useful tool, probably still be around in some form.
So this is all really fascinating, and of course, there is going to be wide speculation. And as you mentioned, I wouldn't personally really trust the Russia investigation into this. It'll probably just be, kind of whatever their preferred narrative will be the conclusory report, and we all just have to go with that. So you mentioned, what we know about the people who are on board and seeing pictures of the crash. Are those actually credible, or is it something? Because I've even heard speculation that he wasn't even really on board, and these photos, how do we know that they're real? And so, just from the fact gathering standpoint, are you reasonably assured, at least as far as you would trust even the reports that are coming out, and why?
Yeah, at the very beginning, I was not sold that he was dead. Yeah, people like this often switch out planes and cars at the last minute. There's a few things that make me pretty sure he's dead. One, and this is probably one of the most convincing, I would say, was after the crash that night, the Wagner office building in St. Petersburg lit up the windows in a cross, sort of as a memorial. The Russian government claims that, they genetically tested all the remains and say, the 10 people on the manifest are the people who were killed. There was a private funeral, however, in St. Petersburg that was not, it was sort of just attended by his family. So someone was buried in Prigozhin's, next to Prigozhin's father. I suspect it was him. But it's not just Prigozhin. The sort of on the ground commander of Wagner was a guy named Dmitry Utkin, who had a very private public profile. I think I've read he's not really been seen in public making like a public appearance or anything since 2014. And he's call sign Wagner. That's where the name comes from. And he is almost certainly dead. He was buried, and the head of Wagner Logistics was on the plane. He had several hundred people at his funeral. So it could, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility they're not dead, but it would be a crazy, very intricate conspiracy, I'd say, to cover it up. And I'm not sure to what end it would be either.
Right. Okay. So then, assuming that the crash is legitimate, these people are in fact deceased, and there was something nefarious going on. It wasn't just a freak accident. Then walk me through some of the scenarios of how this impacts the Putin regime and this still conflict with Ukraine. Does this really impact that, depending on who may be responsible for it?
So I would say it probably doesn't affect things too much on the ground in Ukraine. For one thing, Wagner's not been on the front lines. They weren't on the front lines since before the march on Moscow. They're not in combat. There are I've seen estimates, that there are about 5,000 Wagner fighters in various countries in North Africa. With different missions, sometimes training the local military forces, sometimes hunting down sort of terrorist rebel groups. I suspect that'll just keep continuing on, potentially under some other auspice, someone else in charge, but that'll keep going on. And as far as I know, there's been a statement from Belarus that the Wagner fighters in Belarus are going to remain there. And they're there, I would say, sort of as a threatening gesture to the West, in terms of like, oh, we could unleash Wagner. I mean, it's rather worrisome, actually. I mean, there's been Poland deployed a bunch of troops to the border with Belarus because of the Wagner fighters there. But I don't think strategically this will change that much. Putin's stability, I don't think, is undermined. I don't think it was, I think it was not undermined at all by the march on Moscow, especially the way that concluded. And I think I mentioned this, I phrased it this way back when I was originally on your show. I don't think Prigozhin was trying to oust Putin or anything. There's this long history in Russia and even in the Soviet Union. It's sort of like called the myth of the good czar. And it's just sort of this idea that the czar or czar-like figure is always truly beneficent and good. And that it's always the advisors, the boyars, whoever, who are really the nefarious people who are thwarting the goodwill of the czar. And so it's the sort of a crucial aspect of almost all rebellions in Russia is that they're carried out in the name of the czar. It's like the evil officials are thwarting the will of the czar, and it's our job to make things right. This is sort of the model that Prigozhin's rhetoric had. There's a very good piece in War on the Rocks about that. I think it's called Prigozhin as Petitioner. So I don't think Putin's authority is undermined, especially now that Prigozhin's dead, if he posed a threat at all. And I think the war is heading in a good direction from Russia's perspective. I can go into more detail if you want sort of a brief sit rep on what's happening.
Sure. And I was going to ask you as well about the $350 million aid package, or $250 million. So I mean, once you get into that much money, it's almost like there's no difference. But the aid package that the United States just sent over to Ukraine, and obviously we're continuing to hemorrhage funds. So where does the United States fit into all of this, and how is the war going, and what's the update?
Right. So the United States, I think it's over $130 billion at this point we have given to Ukraine, both in the form of military equipment and also sort of direct funding for the Ukrainian state. I mean, we are funding Ukrainian pensions, Ukrainian school teachers. The Ukrainian state is functioning on US funds. And without those, I mean, Ukraine would collapse very rapidly. Now, there is increasingly pushback domestically against further aid to Ukraine. This was really clear in the debate, sort of this divide between the old neocon guard and the new wing. I thought Vivek was great on Ukraine. DeSantis waffled a little bit, but still obviously different than Mike Pence and Chris Christie and whatnot. And I'm not sure of how it breaks down in the House, but I've heard headlines sort of that there could be a holdup to further aid. I forget if Biden wants another 25 billion, a lot of money. Now, but here's the issue. And so let me switch over to the battlefield, and then I'll tie it back into this aid. So it's been going on 80 or 90 days now, the Ukrainian counteroffensive. And the goal of this counteroffensive was to cut Crimea's land bridge to the rest of Russia off. Basically, Ukraine was supposed to dash through the Russian defenses to the coast of the Sea of Azov. And then Crimea would basically only be able to be supplied via the Kerch Strait Bridge, which the Ukrainians have bombed a few times to not great success, but they have. And that's sort of a thin lifeline to depend on. Now, none of this has gone according to plan. And I'm on the record back in like April, after the Discord leaks came out of all these Pentagon documents that some like 21-year-old Air National Guardsman was posting on Discord. We got the full breakdown of the 9 brigades that the West was training for this counteroffensive, including basically a breakdown of what their equipment would be and whatnot. And it was very clear back then. Well, 2 things were clear. One, those leaks said that that Western US military officials were skeptical that the counteroffensives would achieve much. 2, that we were scraping the bottom of the barrel to equip these 9 brigades. And I said at the time, we don't think it's going to work, and we're scraping the bottom of the barrel to get, this is sort of do or die in a sense. So what happens next? No one seems to know what's happening next when this doesn't work. And it seems we're at that point now. The counteroffensive has had extreme intense fighting. I mean, the Russians have suffered lots of losses as well, but the Ukrainians, huge losses. They admitted in the first week that they lost something around 20% of all their frontline combat equipment. That's what they admitted to. I mean, there's all kinds of people who spend all their free time watching all of the footage of the front line that comes out, trying to tabulate how many of this or that were destroyed. But the Russian defense has proved to be quite effective. And it was sort of Soviet doctrine, going back to it, is sort of emphasized a defense in depth. And it's generally identified that there's sort of 3 main lines of the Russian defense. And then in front of it is what's called the screening line, which is sort of lightly held and lightly defended. And it's also called the crumple zone. It's not meant to be held. Well, it's taken about 3 months for the Ukrainians to make 1 breach in this crumple zone. And part of that is due to the degree to which Russia mined this screening line. I mean, it costs billions of dollars to demine, so this is going to be a problem for decades. But the contact line in Ukraine is extremely saturated with both anti-tank and anti-personnel mines. So civilians and kids who aren't even born yet are unfortunately going to be suffering for decades to come. But it has shredded the Ukrainian offensive, and they have not been able to generate enough mass for a significant enough assault. So they've sort of been attacking in a piecemeal manner. And now that everything has sort of fallen apart, we're seeing a blame game where Ukrainians are saying the West should have given us more equipment sooner. And Western officials are saying, oh, these dumb Ukrainians, we trained them in how to fight a modern combined arms warfare. And they're just going back into their old Soviet habits, which I think is sort of quite unfair to the Ukrainians. For one thing, they don't have air superiority, which is sort of a central aspect of all Western military doctrine. And two, they don't have the equipment in general to launch the sort of offensive the West wanted. And Ukraine now, I don't expect the counteroffensive to really move anywhere. I mean, they've sort of reached the first line of defense, which some people are like, oh boy, now it's really over. But I think this is completely cope. This is in a fever dream.
Wow.
So now there's two shortages that come into play here. One is the manpower shortage. It's become very clear that Ukraine is running out of troops. I mean, who knows how many, several tens of thousands of casualties were sustained by Ukraine in Bakhmut. That seems safe to say. No one has any idea how many casualties either side has had. There are all kinds of estimates. I am of the view that Ukraine probably has suffered 2-to-1 casualties against Russia just due to the enormous imbalance in Russian artillery. But Ukraine's running out of people. And in the past few weeks, there's been a deluge of articles about how men in Ukraine are afraid to leave their homes because they'll be dragged off basically as cannon fodder. I mean, there's one account of a person who was just sort of basically drafted off the street, sent to the UK for training, and wounded and sent back to the rear on the front line, all in a span of 2 months. So they're running out of people. There's all kinds of draft dodgers getting out of the country. And the West cannot rebuild an army for Ukraine. We've sent basically everything we have. I think last time I went into some detail about the huge disparity in artillery shell production, but we can't keep supplying Ukraine how we have been. I suspect the amount of aid we can provide is going to be going down in the future, no matter what the will is. There's just not enough stuff to send. I mean, we sent a full third of our stockpile of Stinger missiles and Javelin anti-tank missiles in the first 2 months of the war. And those will take years to rebuild to the previous stockpile. So it's probably going to be long and bloody, but it is my view that Russia is going to continue to grind Ukraine into the dust. And unfortunately, a lot of Ukrainians are going to be killed. I don't really know for what purpose. I think the more time that goes on, the worse chance Ukraine will have at cutting some sort of half-decent deal. So it's rather depressing.
It is. And so do you anticipate that Ukraine is just holding out because the United States continues to send these funds and to, fund the pensions and so forth and provide, military equipment and everything. And if we get a Republican president who wants to broker a deal and who isn't willing to fund more support, or if Congress just says, we're not going to agree on sending more support, that would more rapidly escalate a resolution to this. And we're just kind of the United States is the one that's perpetuating this conflict just in terms of the funding.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt. I mean, Ukraine would not, the Ukrainian military has been destroyed, basically, and they're fighting with a reconstituted military equipped almost entirely with Western weapons. I mean, without Western, almost entirely American support, Ukraine would not be able to resist at all. So it is our support that's continuing that. I'm not sure to what extent will be a Republican would be able to sort of break the blob and get through, sort of force Ukraine to the negotiating table. And I mean, I don't envy Ukrainian President Zelensky at all, because it has the entire time has been on the record saying we're reclaiming our borders from before 2014, including Crimea. nothing else is acceptable. We will not hand over 1 inch of land. Well, if that, I mean, that's not feasible. I don't think it was ever feasible, but it's clearly not really on the table now, unless there's the US and Western Europe dramatically change their economies into fighting an industrial war of attrition. And if he tries to negotiate, I think he would be sidelined, killed, who knows what, by sort of the far right nationalist elements in Ukraine who want to fight on till the end. So I don't think he has any way to fight, to compromise. I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me with everything going on, of course, domestically here in America, and the weaponization of government and all of these other things going on that people are paying attention to. I mean, even just the hurricane in Florida and other things that are dominating our news cycles. There's not as much attention now paid to Ukraine. It's almost like we just say, oh well, that's we're all as conservatives against funding Ukraine more to the hundreds of millions of dollars, but this is just another day in Congress, and it doesn't really break the news into the news cycle. But last question for you, and I appreciate your time, Zachary Yost. How much will this play into, do you think, the general election? Will this become a bigger deal? I mean, people have kind of squabbled in terms of the primary of the Ukraine response, but I don't see that really moving the needle one way or the other for any of the candidates involved. Do you think that if this issue is still persisting and there is still a Russian-Ukraine conflict as we get to the general election, that will be more of a topic on voters' minds?
Well, it's hard to say. I think it would be quite disastrous for Biden if Russia has some major victories over the next year, which is possible. I'm not expecting Russia to blitzkrieg or anything either when they go on the offensive in the coming months, which seems likely. But Biden's very identified with this war. He's very on the record for it. I say it would depend on who the Republican nominee is. I don't think it's going to be a neocon type person, but I could see if Mike Pence, for instance, was the nominee, which I don't expect he would be. We need to double down on our aid to Ukraine, and attacking Biden for I think anyone's going to attack Biden for mismanaging it. I doubt the Republican will, whoever it is, will be like, I'm going to get in and redouble our effort in the fighting. I suspect the Republican will broker some kind of, he'll claim he'll broker some kind of peace deal. I mean, I suspect it'll look like wherever the fighting eventually stops, I suspect it'll look like the line of demarcation between North and South Korea in terms of just this sort of lukewarm conflict that is dangerous and not really a easy way to tie it up to a neat and tidy end, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, we'll continue to follow this and really appreciate, Zachary Yost, your insights and expertise here, and informing all of us who have been following this but don't know the ins and outs as much as you do. So how can people follow you and listen to your podcast with the Mises Institute?
Sure, people can follow me at Zachary Yost on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. You can subscribe to War, Economy, and State wherever you subscribe to your podcasts, and you can follow my Substack, The Yost Post.
Awesome. Well, as things continue to progress and there are other developments in Ukraine, looking forward to having you on again for your analysis. So thanks so much for joining today.
Thanks so much for having me.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
On MyPillow's 20-year anniversary with over 80 million MyPillows sold, Mike Lindell wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on his MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for only $19.98. The regular price is $69.98 and just $10 more for a king size. You'll receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, which I love, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of the amazing products you've had your eye on from MyPillow. So go to mypillow.com and enter promo code Jenna to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98. You can go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475. Be sure to use the promo code Jenna. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna.